I think we can get started. So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our live webinar today. My name is Peter. I'm leading the marketing team here at UXCam. UXCam, we are a mobile app analytics solution, a leading app analytics solution. I'm joining today from Berlin, Germany, and I will be your host today. So today we'll be covering a very interesting topic, basically whether no-code events or smart events, as we call them here at UXCam, can help solve some of the analytics problems caused by traditional event-based analytics today. So I'm really honored to be joined by Daniel and Khan from Costa Coffee. We have been working with them for about 3 years now, and have gone through a lot together. So yeah, I would ask Dan Khan if you could also give a quick intro about yourselves.
I'll start. Thank you, Peter, for the introduction. I'm Dan. I look after digital analytics at Costa Coffee globally, and I'll pass it over to Khan.
Yeah, hi. Hi, everyone. And yeah, thanks, Peter, for having us today. So yeah, my name's Khan. I'm one of the product leads in the Costa Global digital team. And yeah, really good to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining today. I think it's going to be a really exciting session. But yeah, as I mentioned, we've been working with the Costa team for about 3 years now. And yeah, before we get started, I think it's good if you get a little bit of context about Costa and the Costa Loyalty app, the organization. So Dan, if I could ask you to just give a quick intro about Costa.
Absolutely. So it's Costa Coffee does what it says on the tin. Really, we sell coffee across the world. So we have a presence in countries globally, although the UK is our original market. And in the UK, it's kind of one of the biggest coffee retailers in the country. Our loyalty scheme again is really quite large. It's one of the biggest in the UK. Roughly about 10% of everyone that lives in the UK is part of our loyalty scheme. So it's pretty big, and we get over 4 million visits every week to our app. And just to kind of demonstrate how important loyalty is to the Costa Coffee brand in the UK, more than half of all of our transactions in our stores are placed via the loyalty scheme on the app. So it's a really important part of our business, and we are reliant on insights and analytics to make that experience for consumers better.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, those are some amazing statistics, and I think there's probably very few people also here in the call who've never heard about Costa Coffee. I would be surprised. Yeah, but in terms of the agenda, I just wanted to quickly run through so that you can see what to expect today. We have quite a lot of things to cover. So we will first talk a little bit about the challenges related to analytics today and the traditional setups, and then we will dive into Costa's digital organization, where Dan and Khan will talk about how the digital organization is set up and how do they work together, what are their rituals across the organization. And then in the second half, we'll basically dive a little bit into what no-code and smart events are, how they work in the mobile environment, and how do we and especially Khan and Dan see them helping to solve some of these challenges that we'll be discussing. And then at the very end, we'll do about a 5 to 10 minute Q&A. So if there's any questions, you can just ask them in the end. You can also throw them in the chat during the session, and then we can cover them in the end. So yeah, don't be shy with questions. Yeah, we'll be happy to answer them at the very end. But yeah, before we jump into the challenges, I just wanted to mention the importance of apps. Still in 2023, especially in retail, apps are still growing globally and are still very important. As you can see, the majority of the retailers see mobile apps being a key driver for their business. And apart from driving traffic and conversions, they can also contribute a lot to building retention and loyalty. And as Dan just mentioned before, it's also a very crucial part, the loyalty app, for Costa's business. So it's definitely still we expect in 2024 this trend to keep growing, right? And then when it comes to project management frameworks, right? So product teams today, especially in a digital context and tech context, are working in agile frameworks, right? So there's nothing new here, really. It's the ideal framework for these kind of organizations. But after talking with quite a few of our customers, companies, including Costa, Dan, and Can as well, we keep seeing that analytics and measurement is still being done according to old playbooks, which means using hard-coded events that are implemented by engineering and sent to analytics platforms, right? So when we look at this graph here quickly, we look at the process basically of Agile on a higher level, right? So product teams are usually working in different squads and generally having bi-weekly sprints that are also fueled by continuous discovery today. And analytics requirements, of course, keep arising as these sprints go on continuously, and product managers are constantly, they need to validate the hypothesis that they formulate as they discover new things and try to build new features. But due to the fast movement, having the right tracking in place can take too long sometimes. And this can also mean that some tracking for certain metrics can get deprioritized, and sometimes it gets delivered too late. So I just wanted to ask Dan, from your side, do you also experience this at Costa Coffee, or how does it work? What do you guys experience in terms of what prioritization depends on?
Absolutely. So at Costa Coffee, we tend to have two quite distinct sets of metrics, which are really important in all of our prioritization work and ongoing tracking. Typically, we have a set of kind of quite high level commercial and revenue based KPIs, and typically they are fairly detached from the more detailed kind of behavioral product metrics that we look to UXCAM to get. They are really relevant for our product teams, which I'm sure we'll go into in a moment. But yeah, we absolutely follow a similar model to what's being shared on the screen right now. I think it's probably worth it also adding we have a kind of a continuous optimization work stream. So once something has gone live, that's not the end of it. We always look to our analytics to understand whether it's working or not working, and we're really pinpointing those frustration points for consumers and optimizing journeys. So yeah, tracking and kind of key metrics around specific journeys are crucial to us understanding the pinch points and making hopefully good decisions to improve consumer experiences.
Thanks, Dan. And sorry, Can, I think did you want to chime in as well?
Oh, just no. I mean, I think Dan's mostly covered it. I think all I was going to say is that that's one of the key areas in which product and insights really collaborate a lot. Within our teams. So we might hypothesize that we think a certain feature will do X, Y, and Z. Some of that may turn out to be true or not, and it's through that process and that analysis that Dan and his team are able to support us to help validate that, look for the weaknesses in the proposition, and refine and optimize and improve it. But yeah, I think Dan sort of summed it up really well.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for the example there. And like one thing that we see here, right, is that the setup for analytics to keep up with some of these metrics, as you mentioned, it often means involving engineering as well, right, and IT for setting up these events. And that often means the whole thing can get a little bit delayed. So when we look at what's the process of setting up these events to support this whole motion that can, as you were also mentioning, to support your team and the product managers, it's a quite lengthy process, right? So normally what we see is that these requests come in, the events are defined, and then you have to look at engineering priorities. Then if they have time, then comes the implementation and then the whole QAing cycle. And then in the end, you also have to wait for the data to come in, right? Because before you collected enough data, you cannot really make any conclusions. So what I wanted to ask you here is, I think, do you see this challenge as well? And when it comes to metrics, Dan, you mentioned that there's two kinds, like there's the higher level business metrics, revenue related metrics, and then there's the behavioral metrics that are often more relevant to the product team. So I assume that in some cases, some of these, maybe especially the product behavioral metrics, can get deprioritized, right? Due to the nature of this process.
I think you're right, and it's probably worth adding that at Costa Coffee we are a global company. So the UK is our biggest market, but we have apps in lots of other markets too. Poland, India, for example. More to come, I'm sure. So the reason I say that is that it's not as simple as having a single kind of work stream. There's lots of different work streams happening all the time, touching multiple markets, multiple teams, and our analytics and kind of product teams are quite lean in terms of people. So it's challenging to bring the coded eventing part of this this process in at the right time. And yes, things sometimes slip, and that's really frustrating because we are then left without insight that, with the power of kind of hindsight, would have been really helpful to have had. So yeah, absolutely. I think this is a very consistent theme that we see at Costa Coffee.
Yeah, and you're absolutely spot on, Dan. I think just to build on that slightly as well is, you mentioned around that we have a more global offering now, and I think that's where having these insights is really important, because we want to be able to share those learnings with our sort of global partners as well. So if something is working or not working, we want to understand why and make sure that we don't repeat mistakes, but also that we can share success. So having the right setup from the beginning is becoming increasingly important for us.
Thank you, Kaan. Yeah, and also last thought on this, of course, I think especially when you're using on the mobile side Android and native Android and iOS, this means you have to do this twice, right? So when it comes to mobile, it can be even more painful. But yeah, shifting gears, I think now let's dive into the organization at Costa Coffee, right? I think it would be very interesting for the audience as well to learn a little bit more about how the product teams are set up. Kaan, as you're one of the global leaders there, so could you share us a bit more about how the teams are structured at Costa?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I'll do before I get to that is give a bit of background on our story and the sort of journey we've been on over the last year or so to get to where we are now, because I think that's important to understand why we're set up in the way we are currently. So I guess if I go back to maybe sort of a year or so ago, our setup was very much where we would have a roadmap that was sort of agreed at the start of the year. And against each quarter, there would be, X amount of initiatives that we were expected to deliver in that time, and we would go off and deliver them. But it was very much a sort of top-down view, where we were sort of delivering things based on sort of business bets and commercial bets, and we didn't have a huge amount of autonomy within our own team to kind of shape how we did things and where and when we did them. And it was a very sort of output-based process where we would deliver something and we would sort of move on to the next thing without really having that space in the process to, review performance, understand where things aren't working, and go back and refine and optimize them. We just sort of, tick a box. Yep, we've done that. Great. We'll move on to the next thing. It obviously was quite frustrating for us, because I think we collectively knew that wasn't really the right way to be doing things, and we needed to start to change. We also still had some elements of kind of more legacy waterfall processes as well, that we also wanted to rectify to try and make us a more truly agile kind of setup. So yeah, around a year ago, we were also having some organizational changes as well. So as part of that, we sort of realized that this was now the time to start to set ourselves up for 2023 and beyond, in a different way, that was going to be more product led and more value based. So we've now moved to a model, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, where we sort of have like quarterly planning, and we have more established ceremonies, so that we can react and tailor our focus and priorities based on more immediate business needs, so that we can react kind of in the moment. And the benefits that we found this really brings to us is it empowers our teams, so they have more autonomy on what they're doing. It ensures we're focused on delivering value and measurable value. So we're focused on outcome, not output. And it also just promotes and enables like greater agility across our organization as well. Going back to what I was saying before, we can react more in real time, and I'll come on to later, some of the ceremonies that we have in place that sort of allow us to do that. So that's just kind of a bit of a background. And then if I talk a bit around how we're set up now. So Dan and I actually sit within the marketing element of the organization. So we have a consumer digital team, which has, as you'd expect, we have a product function, we have an insights function, and other areas as well. And that's where Dan and I sit. And that's also where our UX design team sit as well. But we sort of act as one sort of almost virtual team with our consumer technology team that sits more within the IT side of the business. But we kind of collaborate together to almost act as one kind of product delivery function. So you have your product UX analytics in one side, and then sort of development, QA, kind of business analysts, all those kind of roles sit in the technology side. And we essentially have sort of 5 kind of core development squads in that setup. So 2 of them are focused on our mobile apps that we've just been speaking about. One of them is focused on our websites. One of them is focused on our e-commerce platform, and one of them is focused on our loyalty platform. And then we have a sort of a shared kind of pool of specialist resources. So business analysts, project managers, system architects, things like that. People from security who we bring in and out of things depending on the scope and scale of a particular initiative. If we need that resource, then we can flex that up and down based on what we're doing. So that's kind of overall in a nutshell, kind of where we are at the moment and kind of why we've got to that point. And then I'll speak a bit later about how we're making that happen on a day-to-day basis.
Perfect, Khan. Thank you very much for all the detailed insights. I think we really got a good view, what's behind the curtain in your team and the organization. And Dan, I would also just ask you maybe say a few quick words how the analytics team is working and how it looks.
Sure. So I am kind of a specialist in digital analytics. So understanding how consumers use our digital products. So app is a huge one. Websites, Khan mentioned. We also have express machines, which you may or may not be aware of, that are part of our kind of area. So I look at the consumer journeys through there with my colleague. So there's 2 of us in our kind of specific digital analytics area. Again, as Khan mentions, we sit within the marketing function, working very closely with all the functions that Khan mentioned, product, marketing more broadly, IT. But I sit within a consumer analytics sub-team, I guess, which is brilliant because within that team you have specialists in different kinds of data. So we have a data scientist, we have a few people that are really great at looking at our consumer database, so understanding that longer term impact of what's going on and the impact, positive or negative, to our kind of commercials. So between me and the rest of the analytics function, we hopefully give that full rounded view and feed all those insights into the different teams to make the right decisions.
Amazing. Thank you, Dan. And yeah, I mean, with definitely we're looking at a huge and massive organization from your side, and of course that also means it's not that easy and it's not simple to align the different teams, right? You've both talked about quite a lot of teams being involved, so it would be interesting to hear a bit about how the planning process works and how do you collaborate, especially Khan and Dan, on between your teams in general.
Yeah, sure. So I think I mentioned before that, yeah, one of the key changes we've made for this year is moving to a quarterly planning model. So this was something we did, really brought in sort of 12 months ago. We hadn't tried it before, so we've had 3 of these sessions now, and each one has been, we've kind of improved our how we run the sessions each time because we've learned from each one. And just to give a flavour of what we do, so the way we set this out at the moment, we're operating them over 2 days. And the first day is very much the beginning of the day. We'll get a sort of a leadership exec view of kind of business performance, what's going well, what isn't going well, to give us an idea of sort of where we need to be focusing. And then we'll have a sort of a product steer on what are those focus areas going to be in the upcoming quarter based on that kind of exec view. That ultimately shows that our priorities are sort of laddering up to our business strategy. We then have and then essentially the rest of the day is a series of breakout sessions where the various squads that I mentioned before will go away. So this will be, product, UX design. We'll have analysts supporting, Dan and his team will be there. All the developers and QA. So it's a fully collaborative session, and we have some of those sort of specialists I mentioned as well. Our BAs will be there. Our project managers will be there. So there'll be a series of breakouts where they'll go to plan. Then we'll have a series of regroups where basically we'll get a sort of a confidence vote on, how confident are you in that, with the things that are on your list for that quarter, that you've got the right setup and support to deliver them. Are there any risks? Call that out. Who do you need to help mitigate those risks? And all of that's kind of captured collectively in front of everyone. So it's a kind of a fully transparent process. So if there are blockers, there is the kind of audience and platform for people to raise that and find the person or people who can help them basically. And then at the end of that day, we have a sort of a summary of where everyone's at. And then the day 2 side of it really is sort of finessing what was done in day 1. So there'll be maybe some smaller breakouts and then a kind of a final regroup, and make sure that essentially everyone is aligned, that what's been committed to, that there's a confidence level that we can work on that over the next quarter basically.
Perfect.
And then I can bring Dan in as well. So then what we also have through that quarter are a series of smaller ceremonies to kind of keep us on track through each quarter. But I don't know, I'll pause for a second. And Dan, if there's anything you want to just add or build to that, feel free to do that first.
No, I don't think so. I think just to bring to life some of the what it really means. We have so many different teams and so many different people at our organisation that want something to happen very quickly in their area. It's sometimes challenging to prioritise what the most important things are. So these sessions that Khan's just described are the ideal place to have those conversations and make the right decisions based off the data for the right reasons. So they're a really great initiative and they're working really well.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So yeah, if it's okay, Peter, I can just give a flavour of some of the ceremonies we've introduced. So yeah, obviously having the quarterly planning is great, but that obviously means there's a 3-month gap before the next one. So we need to have a series of sessions with sort of key stakeholders, through that quarter. And there's 4 key ceremonies that we've put in place. So one of them is a sprint demo. Which sort of does what it says on the tin, but it's essentially a way where each of those development squads that I mentioned earlier can showcase what they've been working on in the previous sprint. So generally, the sort of product leads will give an overview of what the squad has done, and then the delivery teams and the developers will sort of have the platform to showcase what they've done. So it surfaces up that visibility. So all of the squads will be present on that call, as well as some key stakeholders as well, so they can see progress of any initiatives that they're particularly interested in. And so that happens each fortnight at the end of each sprint, and then the team spend the rest of the day planning for the following sprint. We also have a fortnightly, what we call a value stream call. So this almost acts as a bit of a raid log, where again all of the product and delivery leads will join that call with some members of our leadership team, and it's basically a chance to sort of go around the houses and make sure, are things on track, are there blockers, are there dependencies, are there risks, and again it's that opportunity on a fortnightly basis to kind of call that out to the leadership group, and then obviously we can assign actions or make decisions in that forum if needed, to keep things moving. And then following on from that, one thing we've added in the last few months, which has started to add some real value, is a product prioritization forum. So this is essentially a forum for new items to come in. So if things come in mid-quarter that obviously hasn't been part of our planning process, this gives us an opportunity to assess it, review it, understand the importance of it, understand if we need to stop something to start on this immediately, or actually do we just slot it into, does it just roll into the next quarterly planning process? And that has all of our sort of product and IT delivery leads, and there's members of our sort of digital leadership on there as well. So we have that kind of broad view, and then we can sort of make that collective decision, and all the right people are involved in making that, basically. So those three essentially allow us to keep things moving during that quarter. And then when the next quarterly planning happens, it almost becomes quite clear what we need to put in because of everything that's happened through those smaller sessions that are happening on a more weekly basis. And then the final one I might hand over to Dan to speak about. So this is a sort of product and insight session that we have to make sure that our areas are talking to each other. So I don't know, Dan, I'll hand over to you, mate, if you want to cover this one.
Yeah, thanks, Khan. So those sessions, as you say, Khan, they happen fortnightly, and they follow a bit of a rolling agenda. So we pick a very specific journey within our app or website or whatever channel every session, and we really forensically look at what's going on. So an example might be the registration journey into our app, or it might be the e-commerce funnel through the app, or it might be something really campaign based. It might be a particular campaign that we've just done. We will engage different kind of analytics specialists in the team, bring together all the different insights, share those insights in an informal way with the product team, the UX team, maybe a representative from the IT side of the business, and we will hopefully demonstrate what's working, what isn't working, and then make some recommendations of what we might want to pull into our planning process to put live and consumer facing at some point in the future. So they're really great sessions. They make sure that we're staying up to speed with the latest data, and I think it gives us brings good discipline across the teams to always be looking at that data and thinking consumer first in everything that we do.
Amazing. Thank you very much to the both of you. It sounds like a very robust process. And then I just want to kind of move on to some of the challenges, right? Because it sounds like you guys already have a very strong process in place, but of course, even the best and most organized processes have challenges. So when it comes to challenges around data and generating insights specifically, we've talked about this the past weeks and months with Dan and Khan as well, and there were three things that kind of emerged as the main challenges today, right? Number one is analytics resources, right? Because Dan, you already have an amazing team supporting by in general in such a large organization that you don't have enough analysts or like enough analytics minded people. Which means that your team has to support a lot of these different departments that you just mentioned. And then when it comes to priority alignment, we talked about the complex nature of event tracking. Well, and because of that, you mentioned before, Dan, that it often means that something has to be deprioritized, right? Because there's a lot of different teams, and sometimes a request can come in a bit late, and that means that it might not be delivered to the right product squad, for instance. And lastly, the decentralized data, which is of course a problem for most of the companies, like making data sources consolidated and making it available in the entire organization so that it's easy to query and see is not easy, and it can be quite hard. So we're gonna now go and dive a little bit into each of these areas from Dan and Khan's perspective. So when we look at analytics resources on a higher level, right, we said that this can be a challenge due to the nature of having to support a lot of teams and maybe not enough people being savvy about the different tools and platforms and how to self-serve, right? So in this sense, maybe Dan, if I could ask you to talk a bit more about this challenge in general.
Sure, yeah. So I mentioned a few minutes ago, I'm part of a great team, but there are only a few people in our team. And Costa Coffee is a massive business with tens of millions of customers or consumers, I should say, and lots of different stakeholders internally. So it's a big challenge to manage the requests that come in from the different stakeholders and create the right bespoke dashboard or report or whatever it might be for that custom audience. It's a very difficult thing to manage, especially as we look to go live in more and more markets over time. So yeah, it's a difficult kind of balance to create the right dashboards for the right teams that are generic enough to give people accessible insight, but also specific enough to answer the exact questions they might have. So I think where we need to get to is a place whereby more and more teams across the business are really confident in self-serving. So I think we're on a bit of a journey there at the moment, and things are kind of moving in the right direction all the time. But by kind of really upskilling key super users within teams, I think there's great opportunity to kind of take some of the workload away from our kind of central analytics team and kind of give it to some of the specialists across the business. But yeah, it's a big challenge. I'm sure it's a consistent challenge in any big organization, but managing the requests coming in and making sure that the output is relevant to that audience is a big challenge. I think it's probably also worth adding that myself, due to the nature of my role, I'm quite an analytical person. I look at UXCam dashboards all the time, but that's not necessarily the same for everybody. So we need to figure out a way of making the data accessible, and yeah, that's another talking point I'm sure we'll cover off as we go through this session.
Yeah, definitely. We have I think later on a point on that one. But thank you, Dan. And then when it comes to the priority alignment, right? This is again something that we touched on, that sometimes some of these behavioral metrics, for instance, could be deprioritized, which still could be important for some of the product team members. So yeah, and here, yeah, also Dan, I don't know if you could share, how this is a challenge. How can it happen sometimes that some requests are, decided to be put into the backlog or not covered in a specific sprint or cycle?
Sure, yeah. So I think we all have the best intentions to do absolutely everything perfectly, but the reality is sometimes we're doing so many different things at the same time. Often bits of what we want to do get missed off or don't make that final cut of the list. So yeah, I think kind of event tracking, unfortunately, is one of those things that, well, the original way of doing event tracking is one of those things that didn't always make it towards the top of the list and sometimes didn't happen. Really frustrating, because it then means that we're often without kind of core insight that would be really helpful to make the right decisions. I think it's just it's a case of managing all those different requests in the right way and using data, or making sure that people are aware of why data is really important. I think that's the key piece here.
Thank you. And then I think lastly we talked about the consolidation of data sources, right? And that this is something that every company probably in the world is trying to achieve, to have in a perfect way. And of course, it's very hard in general to have every data source consolidated and easily accessible. And I know that you guys work with a lot of different tools given the size of the organization. So I don't know, maybe you could also talk a little bit here, Dan, about how this can be a challenge sometimes and how the team is tackling this today.
Yeah, I think I kind of covered it to a certain degree a few minutes ago, but I use UXCam and other analytics tools daily because that's my job. Other people don't have that as part of their job titles. So yeah, I think we need to figure out a way of at least for our kind of quite high level commercial OKRs, we call them at Costa, we need to figure out a way of making the right data really accessible in a very kind of real time way. So we use Power BI at Costa Coffee for a lot of our kind of quite high level reports, which is a very widely adopted tool across the whole business. That might be an example of a way to make sure that we can get data from a UX CAM or another analytics partner platform into a central place where it's kind of in the same place as all of our other different data sources, to make it really accessible for our different teams across the world to get answers to those questions. But yeah, I think one of the challenges is, we all know what it's like, right? You can have a spreadsheet, you can have like 100 different logins to different tools, and it's sometimes a bit of a it's not a great thing to ask someone to find the right login or reset their password, and it's a bit of a blocker towards getting people to adopt tools. So if we can figure out a way of making it really accessible and easy for our different teams to get to that data, great.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Dan. I think just to add as well, I think the sort of usability and intuitiveness of those kind of interfaces can really help as well, because especially if it's something that you're not using that frequently, if you only go back to something every few weeks or every few months, if something's really simple and easy to use, it means it's easier to navigate and find the thing you're looking for. Whereas if it's more complex as some interfaces can be, then it's going to put people off using them, right? And they'll have to reach out to the central teams for support because they won't be able to get what they want through self-service.
Yeah, thank you very much for the examples here. I think it's in almost most of the even smaller companies can often be a problem. But yeah, now that we have talked about some of the challenges, and thanks again for sharing so many details, both Dan and Khan on that side. I would like to just take a moment to introduce no-code or smart events. So they basically allow UXCAM users to create events from user interactions, including tabs of various elements in the app, screen visits, and other micro user interactions. And this comes from our SDK, auto capturing a vast amount of these kind of interaction data, which is basically we're serving as the base for setting up events without writing any code through the UI. And it's also one of the great things about it is that it's retroactive. So if you're already using UXCAM, the moment you set these events up, you will be able to see the retroactive performance of that event and see it historically, basically. And I also just thought before we talk a little bit more about how they work and what Dan and Khan think about them from their perspective, just wanted to take a moment to introduce UXCAM, right? As I said at the beginning, we're a mobile app analytics solution combining product analytics and qualitative user analysis solutions like session replay and heat maps. And our mission is basically to enable mobile product teams to make product decisions faster, easier, and more impactful, which is also why we are working and we've been working on smart events. And yeah, talking about going back to smart events. So they are currently in beta and for now only available on Android and iOS. During the past months, we've been working a lot together with Dan and his team at Costa. They were participating in this beta program and been giving extremely valuable feedback to shape this solution and to help basically address some of the challenges that Dan and Khan were covering before. So I'm just going to do a very quick run through of how they work to give you a little bit of more context. Don't worry, it's not going to be a product demo. It's just so that you get an idea. So in a nutshell, once you decided what interactions and these kind of behavioral events you want to track, you can go to that screen and select the relevant area using your mouse, using heat maps. This will provide you, after this, you will be provided a list of sessions where users actually interacted with that part of a screen that you selected. And once you're inside a specific session recording, there is a detailed timeline with the metadata that you can see up in here in the top right corner. And it will give you that kind of interaction that you're looking for. And then with just a click, you can set up an event, create an event from the interaction through a UI, and also easily visualize it on dashboards and see the retroactive past data there. So in short, you can set up a lot of events independently and often skip this engineering queue and prioritization queue that we talked about before. So going back to how we see basically this potentially helping, right, on one of these challenges that we talked about before, especially around the analytics savviness and resources. It will essentially really help PMs to see trends faster, discover new journeys faster. As Kaan mentioned before, this is something that's regularly being addressed in the product organization, and due to the retroactive nature, it will also help to validate some of these hypotheses. As Kaan also mentioned that before, that this is constantly also something that is of course happening. They need to be validated before you decide to build anything. And one important thing that we also want to bring here is that bringing in funnels or traditional funnel setups that are often used to track a journey and conversion performance. Traditional setups are often predefined, right, by product or marketing teams, and then the different steps are tracked by API events. And of course, one problem here is that users don't always take the journeys that we want them to take, or they can go more creative. And some of these small journeys that you see in the graph here, interim conversion steps, can be missed in this process. So in this example, you see that between viewing a product and adding to cart, and this is like an e-commerce example here, they could have viewed a new promotion that has been added and dropped off because of that. And then in this case, you're kind of missing these interactions. And I know that at Costa, Dan and your team, you've been already working on using session replays basically before to find some of these hidden points. So maybe I could just ask you guys about an example of how you've been doing that before.
Sure, I think there's a few examples we could share, but quite a nice one is our registration journey into our loyalty scheme. So after a consumer downloads the Costa app for the first time, they need to register. So they will tap a register call to action, fill out some details, and then tap a complete call to action basically. And we knew we had a conversion rate from the start of the journey, so tapping register to the end, completing it. That's good, and that's a good metric to track. If it's going up, we're doing something well. If it's going down, something's wrong. But where kind of events and smart events increasingly really come into their own is understanding the why behind the number. So if you can imagine I don't have any visuals to share, but if you can imagine our registration journey, it has things like give your email address, choose a password, give your first name, last name, choose your address. All those kinds of fields are within the flow. And what we've been able to do is use events to be really forensic about the drop-off between each specific step in that journey. And that's like gold dust insight, because that shows us exactly where consumers are dropping off, and it gives us a way to focus our efforts to make a specific part of the journey better. So it might be password, for example. It might be that our password selection criteria are a little too strict, or maybe it's not obvious enough whether a consumer has met the requirements or not. That would be an example kind of insight that events and smart events could give you. And if we'd have kind of made a proposition consumer facing and we'd forgotten to kind of have coded events in play, smart events would be a really easy way to retroactively get that data. So yeah, that'll be an example.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great example. Thank you for sharing, Dan. And yeah, I mean, just basically summarizing that a little bit, and of also what Dan just described. When you work with a session replay solution, for instance, like a lot of companies are, smart events are essentially also going to help in not having to look through hundreds and thousands of sessions by PMs, but instead they could be set up really easily through the UI. And just one other like interesting or cool thing that we've added recently is an AI-based suggestion for the different paths users take to complete a specific conversion. So essentially, you could define a conversion event through a smart event, and then in UXCam ask for what are suggestions for paths that users take to complete that conversion. So that could actually help this whole funnel analysis process, also as Dan mentioned, by just adding new steps also to the actual funnel and being able to constantly optimize this basically and update it and get new insights through that. And also, like, one last thing is, we didn't talk that much about the QA part, but I'd imagine that Dan, you also possibly see this sometimes, that when you have coded events, some of them that are older, it can happen that it gets forgotten a little bit, right? How it was set up, what it's tracking. Although there's usually, in an ideal world, good documentation, but it still happens that they're not sure if it's still tracking correctly or if it's still fine. And I think one of the benefits here is that with the session replay, you can actually also check that if it's still working.
Yeah, and I think sorry to jump in, but I think it also just it gives our teams, so Khan and my teams, more autonomy over the whole analytics strategy and tagging and fixing process. So ultimately, it means that rather than myself having to go to a developer or a tester to ask them to spend some of their limited time in investigating an issue, I can take that away from them and do it myself. And instead, that developer or designer or user experience professional can focus on consumer facing stuff that really makes a difference to the numbers. So yeah, I think it's a really positive thing.
Thank you. Well, we really hope that it's gonna keep improving the process and then helping all the different stakeholders to be more independent going forward. And then I also still kind of on this point, I wanted to ask you, like, what other challenges you had with traditional event-based analytics, next to some of the points that we've already discussed.
Sure, yeah. So I guess just an example really of something that we had to do a couple of years ago now. We had to make some tough decisions and remove some of our coded events from our analytics tools because they were too expensive to track, which was frustrating at the time, but it was the right thing to do. But it obviously meant that by removing them, we were then blind to the insight. So this is where smart events come in, because that's not a problem, because we can just set up or reset up a smart event very quickly and still access that data retroactively, which is a really good thing. Yeah, I don't really have much more to add. I could go to the specifics, but I don't think that's really needed today.
Yeah, thank you. And then one last cool, like one thing that I wanted to share is that the way smart events can also work is, especially for an organization like Costa, where you have a lot of different products in the loyalty app as well, is one smart event can be enough potentially to visualize the performance of individual products as well under that product group. So for instance, if you're looking at hot drinks and there's cappuccinos or the different kind of things, that you just need to set it up once, and then basically after that it will already break down that interaction for the individual sub product. So I assume that's also something that is going to help in the future, Dan, for you and your team.
For sure. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you very much for sharing some of these examples. And yeah, I mean, essentially, I think we also covered some of these points before on priority alignment, but I think one of the benefits, as you also mentioned, will be that the number of requests, if smart events are widely adopted and you will be rolling it out across the teams, can reduce the number of requests towards both the analytics and the IT team. And I think what you mentioned, Dan, this can really help afterwards, so the teams can focus more on their core functions instead of having to invest more time in the whole analytics setup and investigation. And I'd imagine, Khan, it's also good from your side because it means less engineering resources having to go into the whole tracking.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, as I think Dan's touched on, we still have a relatively lean setup across our teams, and as we're growing as a business, more and more requests coming into those central functions. So anything we can do to free up their time to focus on other things is always going to be helpful to us for sure.
Amazing. And then, yeah, lastly, I think one of our last points is when we talked about the consolidation and the importance of visibility. Of course, Dan mentioned it's very important making it available, all the data available across the organization. So, of course, smart events will not fix everything, but as far as the mobile app business and the loyalty app is concerned, it will help, at least on the mobile app side, to have most of the data, almost all the data, in one place. So, Dan, I also wanted to ask for your view here of how do you see this, like from the mobile app side, improving next year, basically, and evolving.
Yeah, I think it's called out as one of the bullet points on the slide. But yeah, one of the, I guess, challenges we've had to face into over the years is having slightly different implementations and journeys, consumer-facing journeys in iOS versus Android. Most things have been done for good reason. Sometimes things have been done because of kind of a miscommunication between teams. It makes, without going to all the details, it makes understanding what's going on a bit of a challenge, because iOS might have done something in a certain way, Android might have been a different way, and it takes a lot of time to talk to the right people to figure out what's going on. We can get around that using smart events, so we can, within a few clicks, understand or reset things up in a more, I guess, understandable way, which I think is a really good step forward. I think also kind of looking forwards, it will be, I mentioned it earlier, but it'll be really interesting to explore how we can bring UX Cam and smart event insights into our broader data pool. So maybe a Tableau or a Power BI, not sure what the tool might be, but some kind of tool that enables us to supplement all of our other data, rich data sources with UX Cam data would be brilliant. So it's definitely something we're interested in looking into. And also it should give more ultimately give autonomy to all the teams across the business to self-serve and use this kind of really important data as much as possible.
Well, that sounds amazing. I really hope that we can help you get there in 2024 with smart events, and that basically brings us almost to the end. So just to recap, overall of what you're expecting for next year, right? Because we've covered a lot of points. Maybe I would just ask you how you feel about that. We talked about super users and providing more autonomy. So maybe just getting your final thoughts about your main expectations for 2024.
I think from my point of view, Khan, please feel free to jump in. But I think 2024 is a year where we really at Costa Coffee go kind of all in with UX Cam and get all of our teams really engaged, relevant teams engaged with the kinds of insight that UX Cam can offer and how it can be really impactful to kind of driving key commercial metrics forward. We really want to go at pace with our kind of optimization work stream. So we're doing various things at the moment, but we want to do a lot more next year. So data and in-app journey data is kind of the bread and butter of that, and that will make it all work. And final point from me, I think global is a big theme for next year. So we work a lot with our UK market. That makes up most of our traffic currently. But as time goes by, we will hopefully become more and more global in our app presence, and that's going to bring with it lots of opportunity and lots of challenges. And I think a key part is going to be the self-serve piece and accessibility to data. Khan, I'll pass to you if you've got any thoughts of your own.
Sure, no, thanks. Yeah, I think really just to extend from that, I mean, I spoke earlier around how we've spent a lot of time this year trying to empower our teams and bring that autonomy in there. So things like this is almost like the next step of that. So we've spent this year trying to sort of solidify this new way of working, which we want to continue into next year, and we'll continue to refine and optimize how we do that. But going with that theme of sort of empowering the teams to be in control of what they're working on and understanding that the data and performance of the things they're working on day to day is really helpful. So if there's easier and simpler ways to do that, then that's only going to be advantageous for all of us in our area.
Amazing. Thank you very much for both of you for sharing your thoughts and all the detailed insights and examples today. So that's basically bringing us to the end of our session, our webinar today. So yeah, thanks very much for everybody who dialed in, and of course, again, a huge thanks to Dan and Khan specifically for helping us a lot on making smart events as powerful as they are, and for sharing so much today. And now it's basically, we are still more or less on time. I think we have 3 minutes left. We can tackle some of the questions. I saw that we had, I think, 2 questions so far. And yeah, as a final thought, if anybody is interested in actually trying smart events, as I mentioned, they're in a beta at the moment, but we have a waiting list. So if you're interested in trying them out, then please reach out to me or anyone at UXCam and sign up to the waiting list. One of my colleagues have shared where you can sign up to it as well in the comments below. But back to questions. So just covering, I've seen 2 questions here, one from Anna. Her question was, how big is the analytics team at Costa versus the number of stakeholders they support? I think this is a question for you, Dan.
Yeah, so at Costa we have lots of different quite specialist analytics teams. There might be pockets of them in finance, for example, or our express arm of the business, but I sit within the consumer data analytics team, and in our team there's around about 10 of us, and apologies if I've mentioned this already, but we kind of cross a range of skill sets. So I focus on digital analytics. There's only two of us that do digital analytics specifically. We also have consumer analytics experts. We have a data scientist and a few others. So there's roughly 10 of us that focus on this kind of data. And there are thousands of people across the Costa business, employee-wise, worldwide. Hence why it's really important for us to nail the self-serve piece moving into next year.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan. And then there was also one more question from Ottavio, who was asking, it seems like you guys have a solid analytics structure and tens of millions of users. Sometimes we get different perspectives between analytics data, user feedback, and stakeholder requests. How do you usually deal with this kind of situation when it comes down to a roadmap prioritization?
Yeah, maybe I'll take this one. I mean, that is the eternal question from a product perspective. It's something we're always wrestling with. I mean, it's tricky because you have to factor in all of those things. What I would say is that we do try to be data driven as much as possible. So if a stakeholder request comes in, we try to make sure that whatever we do in response to that request is led by some form of data or research, and that we can turn every request we get into a problem statement of some sort that allows us to then kind of rank it against other problem statements for other initiatives that then helps to determine the priority of it. It's not an exact science, and it can depend on the size and scale of what's being asked for, but that's generally how we try to approach things.
I don't think we've covered it at all today, but it might be worth just adding that a lot of most of the UX CAM current data is largely numbers based. Obviously, there's the session replay, qualitative, rich stuff as well. But we also supplement our data with things like NPS and App Store reviews, and we often run kind of consumer-facing surveys on some of our digital channels. So we try to bring in data from lots of different places to get a real full view, and we digest it all, understand what it's saying, and that feeds into the prioritization roadmap as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Kaan and Dan. I think Ottavio sounds like he's also happy with the answer. Yeah, and then I think I don't see any other questions, but before we conclude, we are almost on time. Just gonna ask if there's any other questions from anyone to either Dan or Kaan or to me or UXCAM related questions. No, not for now. Well, I think I also just want to mention that this session will be available on demand. So probably around by mid next week, early next week, we should have it available on the website. So if you want to look at it again or look at the recording or share it with anyone, you will be able to do so, and we'll share it with all of you who have been here today and signed up. So yeah, I think with that, we can call it a day, so to speak. Once again, I would like to thank Dan and Kaan for sharing so many insights and making this discussion so insightful. Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for joining. And have a very nice evening and rest of the day. And as I said, we'll be following up with you very soon with the on-demand link of the session.